Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Women Today. Today we'll be focusing on Muslim women excelling in education, and I have three amazing guests with me today. To my left we have Selina Begum, Sophia Layla Shah, and Shahimia. So if you'd like to just introduce yourself, who you are and what exams you've recently taken or what exams your daughter has recently taken. We'll start with you.
So my name is Selina, as you just said. I've recently done my A-levels. I studied economics, politics and history, and I'm going to be going into university this year at Queen Mary.
Nice.
I'm Sophia. I study at Woodford County High School. I just finished my GCSEs and I just started my A-levels.
Nice. And
So I'm Shahimia. My daughter's just done her GCSEs. She worked really hard, extremely hard. My other children, have done A-levels. They're doing degree, and also I've got some younger ones as well. So one in year 9, and the youngest is in primary school. So the whole spectrum of education, and also I've been a teacher myself. So I've taught students doing GCSE, and also I've been through the education system as well. Starting with arriving in the UK as a very young child with no English, so it's been quite an interesting journey for me.
yeah, so Khali will hear a lot from you regarding that as well today. Just for our viewers, would you like to let the viewers know who's your daughter?
So my daughter Sophia Layla Shah, or Sophia.
Yeah. And today we do have a number that you can call. It's going to be shown on the bottom of the screen. And just by way of introduction, I'm Sadia Zaman. I'm going to be the host for today. So why don't we start off with the youngest of us all, Sophia. So you recently did your GCSEs. Do you just want to share how you did in them and how you found the process?
So I found the process I think I worked really hard, and I was quite independent with it all, so I didn't have tutors or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time working for these GCSEs, but then in the end it all worked out, and I got 1, 8 and 9 9s in the end.
MashaAllah,
So,
that's amazing.
Thank you.
You definitely paid off, and
Yeah.
Khali, you must be very, very proud of yourself.
I am. I'm extremely proud, like with all my other kids as well. Well, I'll say all, my other 3 kids.
Yeah.
However, I was actually quite not concerned, but I was a little worried that Sophia's actually working too hard. So I was actually popping into a room every so often saying, look, take a break, GCSEs aren't the end of the world, so to speak, because you'll have much bigger exams ahead of you.
Yeah.
So try and keep it in proportion. However, I don't think my advice was heeded. She did work really, really hard, and she deserves the superb grades that she got. However, I would say in future, just try and balance it a little bit.
Well, that's good life advice for everything, really, I suppose. When we do go into our careers, I mean, that's definitely something that we'll have to take heed of because we'll have more responsibilities, especially as women in society as well. So congratulations,
Thank
Sophia. And Selina, you're also very well accomplished. Do you just want to share a little bit about yourself and your background and how you did?
In my A-levels, so I came from Plashet School, secondary school, and then I'd say the progression into A-level was quite unexpected. I thought, I've done 11 GCSEs, 3 to 4 A-levels aren't going to be anything, but I think when you actually jump into A-levels you realise how hard it is and sort of the commitment and time it takes, and it's definitely something everybody that does A-levels has to work towards and commit to. And I'd say it was quite a difficult journey for myself, especially because I feel like until you do the exams, it doesn't actually hit you how important they are and sort of committing all the time you can. So there was a lot of not last minute revision, but it was more about, have I done this, have I done that, and then just going through everything last minute, and just sometimes it can get to you. And I think picking up on what her dad said, it's just sort of sometimes you do need to give yourself a break and remember, it's not the be all and end all. But so I got AAB in those, so I'm going to be studying at Queen Mary now. Yeah.
MashaAllah, that's really good. So yeah, I think when it comes to A-levels, they're definitely a step up from GCSEs. I know back in my day, because I'm old now, but back in my day, the equivalent of an A star in GCSEs was the same as a C in A levels. And now, obviously, that you're doing A levels after 2 years and not the standard 1 year, it's a lot harder to get the top grades that a lot of students were getting, which is kind of why they did it in the first place. But I think it's really crucial, especially to kind of get you into that next step. But, you know, it's also good to balance it out, obviously, and make sure that you're making the most of it. So, obviously, as women and young girls, education is something that is quite a privilege that maybe as Bangladeshis, generations before us might not have had, or been exposed to role models and people who are doing very well as something to aspire to. So would you say that you have any role models or, you know, inspirations that you kind of saw and you wanted to, you know, kind of emulate?
Funnily enough, whilst my mum didn't go through the academic system, I'd say she's always been a big role model for me, because I feel like with the culture back in the day, it was sort of getting married and then domesticating yourself. But my mum became a role model for me because she'd always said, you know, I didn't get to go through the education process, which is why I want to educate my daughter and make sure she can make the best thing of herself, because my mum didn't have those opportunities. So I'd say she's always been a role model for me because I've seen her excel. So having domestic duties aren't easy. As you might not be revising for exams, but there's definitely so many hard things to do. So I sort of look up to the commitment that she has to her household and her family, and I'd like to reflect that in my work and in my family.
That's amazing. Like, just seeing that dedication and hard work, regardless of what it's in, and especially I think being able to play a role in the house as well as outside of it and in the education system, that's a balance that very few people manage to strike well. So I can totally relate to you on that when it, you know, comes to seeing your mum as a role model, even though they might not be, you know, have gone to university or even finished A levels or even done A levels and did another course in, instead of that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what about you, Sophia?
I think within the younger generation of our family, there are a lot of like successes to look up to. For example, you. So you're doing really well and everything. But for the viewers who don't know, she's my cousin also. And even my sister, my other cousins, they've all done really well, and even some YouTubers. So I know a lot of people watch Unjaded Jade. So she's a YouTuber, and she posts a lot of things about studying and work ethic, and yeah, so I think for our generation there's like a lot of inspiration out there, like using social media. I don't have like Instagram or Snapchat or anything, but even on YouTube there's still a lot of inspiration out there.
Definitely, actually, like seeing people that you would never have the chance to meet otherwise, especially, you know, I know some people who have done really well in the Bangladeshi community, and I would only know about them in the past couple of years, and that's because of the internet, and that's because of, you know, the TV and watching programs like this or other programs. And now that that's becoming more and more popular, you kind of see, actually, you know what, maybe my ethnicity doesn't have to hold me back, or maybe my my gender doesn't have to hold me back so much. And that's really kind of a privilege, I suppose. But also, with social media comes distractions as well. So, you know, striking that balance, I suppose, is becoming more and more relevant. And what about you? Have you found kind of raising, so you have 2 boys and 2 girls, have you found education different for boys and girls, or even when you're, you know, when you were a teacher, how did that change between the two?
Certainly, as a teacher, there's certainly a different sort of dynamic where you've got young women or young boys, for example. So recently I was doing some supply work in Ilford County School, which is a boys' grammar school, which is the equivalent to where Sophia goes, which is Woodford County, which is the girls' grammar school.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere is very striking. You know, it's very lively. I mean, these are all the bright boys from Ilford who've got in, like, out of 12,000 applicants, only about 120 get in. Yeah. Very competitive. But despite that, the dynamic is very different. yeah, they're very, very sort of ebullient. They're quite energetic and so on. And when I visited Woodford, I've not taught there. The atmosphere is much calmer.
Mhm.
So I think there is that difference between sort of boys and girls, their sort of natures and so on.
Yeah.
A lot of the teachers in my school who have taught at both boys and girls schools, they say that the boys are less afraid to make mistakes, so they'll just put themselves out there.
Ah,
So
yes.
I think the problem with a lot of, in my school at least, I've noticed a lot of the Bengali girls, they won't want to put their hand up just because they don't know the answer for sure. They'll just whisper it to their friend or something. So I think there's real benefits of just putting yourself out there, and it really doesn't matter if you get something wrong, or because it's school, you're meant to
Yeah.
make mistakes. It's not about always being perfect all the time.
Interestingly enough, actually, I think that's a proven
Yeah.
kind of phenomena. So men will apply for jobs if they meet 60% of the criteria, and that's their kind of like baseline. And then women will only apply for jobs if they meet 100% of the criteria.
Yeah.
So it's, learning to make mistakes, but also pushing yourself out there and saying, yeah, I can learn on the job, I can adapt myself and be confident. And I think definitely, making mistakes early on can help you when you're kind of growing and developing, especially because, your younger stages of life, that's when you develop the most, and that's when you kind of set your milestones and, your baseline, and okay, what, this is what I'm confident with, this is where I can really excel in and shine. So as a teacher as well. Yep.
Yeah, so I think with from what I've seen, like over the years, the achievement of girls has gone up and up, sort of gone up every year, and I think in our community as well, it's like you're seeing more and more young women sort of coming through with amazing grades in GCSEs, A-levels, and going on to university as well.
Yeah.
So that's really fantastic to see. And to a certain extent, boys have fallen back a little bit. So not sure why, but it may be to do with the way they change the syllabuses and the assessment systems. And like you were saying before, now they're changing it all back again, and they're making it into a more sort of exam-based, which is what I did when that was like many years ago, like a generation ago. But what that sort of forced students to do is actually the deeper learning. So you study your course and you review it over a period of 1.5 to 2 years.
Yeah.
And then to get the really high grades, which as you said is a bit harder to get, is you'd have to sort of really go into depth. So there is a positive to it and a negative. And I think the negative is that on the vocational and technical courses, they're being devalued all the time. And that's where I think, especially for young women, they can actually make a huge impact in those kind of professions and industries, and they're sorely underrepresented, in the scientific, technical, engineering, sort of computer science, those kind of areas.
So you think that there's more space for women in the kind of STEM?
They're needed. I think they're needed in those subjects.
That's interesting actually, because you're both not going into the sciences, or considering, going into the arts at least. And what is it that puts you off? Is it the kind of male dominating aspect of it? Because I know actually in medicine it's pretty much a 50-50 split with women and men, but it's definitely not seen in engineering and science as much.
Funny enough for me, I've got like a completely different experience, because the college I went to, all my friends did all the sciences, and I was the only one of my friends group that decided I want to go down the humanities route. And my decision was partly based on what I wanted to do in the future. I wanted to go into law, and partly based on the fact that I just enjoyed humanities more, right? And I excelled at it more. So I feel like from my personal experience, a lot of my friends, and even in like Asian communities, it's sort of pushing their daughters into going into STEM subjects. I think that's something that's definitely on a rise, and sort of that mobility ladder in terms of pushing women to become doctors and pharmacists and engineers, etc. So I think that's definitely a movement that's starting, and I've seen it within sort of my friends group and my family. I personally didn't take it because I was just more geared towards the humanities route, but I think it's definitely something that's on the move.
Well, law is definitely something that, that age-old joke. You either become a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, right? So I suppose there is that, sphere of humanities, and that's important too. But I definitely, agree with that. What do you think, Sophia?
Well, I know at least in my school, kind of the holy trinity of subjects that everyone takes is biochemistry, maths, and I think it's because a lot of parents and even the kids themselves think that like going into medicine is just a safe route, and you're going to end up being successful. And it's a lot of people who aren't super interested in it, but they'll just do it. But I think for me at least, I've always been interested in reading, English, history, everything, so it's kind of just been a given for me.
Yeah. So those are the subjects that
Just picking up on what she said about medicine and sort of the success, I've always had sort of like a bit of a grey area, because I feel like, especially with the recent climate, there's so many junior doctors, there's people being underpaid extremely, like even though there's like this high demand in the NHS, etc. I feel like just the stress that goes on to medical work, especially people that work for the NHS, and sort of the underpayment, I feel like this element of you're going to become successful if you become a doctor is a grey area, because it's not as black and white as you become a doctor and suddenly, you're making the world's amount of money or you're going to be super successful. It's definitely a journey. So I feel like a lot of people expect that once you get the title, that's it, you've become something. But I feel like there's definitely more behind that. It's sort of people work a lot more. It's not just the title, it's sort of working your way up that social sort of ladder.
Definitely. I can, vouch for that myself. Just watching the doctors, especially. So I'm on obstetrics and gynecology at the moment, which is women's reproductive health as well as delivering babies. And they do a 24-hour shift once a week. Even the midwives do that. Obviously, children can get born at any time, so the department's open 24 hours a day. And even though you might get paid whatever, is that worth what you're giving up? Is that, you're basically giving up a lot of your life and a lot of the time that you might be able to spend with your family on, on their own kind of baby showers, because you're delivering other people's babies. And that sacrifice, it's a lot of responsibility as well. Yes, it can come with the, you're a doctor now, but at the same time, it's a lot of responsibility holding someone's life and someone's potential death in your hands. And it's intense work that can really take a lot out of you, and you're constantly learning in medicine. So actually, if you're not very interested and you're kind of, I'll go into this holy trinity just to become a doctor, and then you can't keep up with it, you're probably going to lose more than you're going to gain.
Definitely.
So having that passion and actually wanting to be able to make a difference with the kind of subjects that you're studying. So you want to go into law, which is kind of an Asian kind of career choice as well. But at the same time, if you're really passionate in it, sometimes you can probably excel in it more than you would have if you went into medicine, even if you were going to get better grades in medicine.
So I think that's definitely important, especially in like the Asian community. Sort of, if it's not the typical route of sort of banker or lawyer, it's sort of getting their kids, sort of being proud of their kids regardless of what academic route they take, and not being shunned down on like certain subjects like drama or the arts or sociology, etc. And sort of just pushing their kids to thrive in what they're best in, because a lot of the time what you see is what you just said, sort of kids feeling like they're pressured into picking these certain subjects, and then by the time it gets to A-level and degree, people are sort of, they've been burnt out and they're not sure what they want to do, and they're sort of, again, back in this box where they're like, now I need to go into a career that I don't even want to do, or a career that I don't enjoy, and then it's definitely draining. So I think that's one push that I'd personally like to see, where parents and just families and even students themselves are being sort of encouraged to pursue subjects they actually like, rather than the typical ones that are known to get you places.
And there's obviously two sides to that, so not falling one end of the extreme, but also doing something that, might not be something you could do as a job, as a career, but it's something that you can kind of live with, and having the other hobby that you really do have a passion for, which might not actually be financially stable and be able to support, for example, your parents even in the future. And actually it's something that my parents would have mentioned, and that's something that you do keep in the back of your mind as well. Like, yes, I really do love doing this, but actually, is it sustainable? Can I do it in 50 years' time and still not regret, losing those opportunities that I could have given to my parents later on? And actually, Khalid, it would be interesting to get your opinion on that as a father in this kind of, this almost perception shift that's happening?
No, so I've tried to I've not actually tried to steer the choices in any way. Like with my daughters are sort of the eldest in our family. So it's literally been down to them doing their own research, you know, what their passions are, what they enjoy studying. However, I've always given my opinion and said, look, this is what I think. However, you make your own decision. So I've tried to be as sort of hands-off as possible in that sense. But I remember when I was going through that same process, the advice that we got was terrible.
Really?
Really terrible. So, and obviously then I worked as a teacher sort of more recently, and even at that time, I don't think students at each stage were getting the sort of very good advice on what certain subjects, where it can take them, or how to relate to their own likes and dislikes or passions, like you said. And at that age as well, it's very difficult to make those kind of choices. And also the way the curriculum has been restructured, and I've got to mention the Gove reforms. It's pretty much like a straitjacket. You don't really have much option, you know. And the whole education system has been warped. It's like a, you know, straitjacket, or, you know, you've got handcuffs on. So the kids have to do these core subjects. They have to do, so they only have very limited choices now. You know, we had a bit more, there was much more flexibility in the system in the past. And I hope they reintroduce that again for vocational subjects as well. Because at the moment, if you can't do well academically, then that means you're a failure. Pretty much, you're seen as a failure. There aren't that many other sort of vocational or technical subjects which have a high status. So that's one issue. The other issue is that dilemma between following your passion or following your likes and things you enjoy, and also doing something that can actually help you to earn. Because at the end of the day, you do have to support yourself, and also unless you have the luxury of having very sort of supportive or wealthy family environment, which is not everybody has that, and also the cost of education is ridiculous. I mean, you guys are going to be shocked. When I did my degree, the government paid, like, there were no fees, right? So first of all, so that's £9,000 a year you don't have to pay, because it was paid by the government, okay? Because they valued education for everybody. Also, they also paid a bursary to certain students from underprivileged or less wealthy backgrounds. So which I got because my parents weren't that well off. And I even managed to get a like a sponsorship or bursary, because I did quite well in my A-levels, because I did engineering and it was a supported course. And so I was actually like a wealthy student, but I had no earnings at the time.
That's fantastic.
So obviously there are schemes. I know universities do provide certain supports like that now. I've looked at it a little bit. But however, the cost on an average student, you're looking at around 50, 60, maybe more, £1,000 of debt on graduation. And that's something I think is totally unjust on the young people coming up now. You know, and something that parents, everybody should be fighting to change this, in my opinion. Because then people can make better long-term choices that would be better for them, and invest in their learning and their education, and not sort of be forced into, I've got to do this as a means to an end, because I've got to support
earn
myself
that money
and,
back.
you know what I mean, and pay it back. You know, I think it's a terrible injustice inflicted on the younger generation.
So there's so many things that you brought up there in terms of the flexibility of the education system being changed and being a lot more restricted.
Evil. That man Gove, he's evil. Needs to be, I don't know.
And then the reforms as well.
Can't say it in public.
The reforms as well. And then just the advice, and actually having teachers who will be able to support you, and, you know, as students, getting the right advice at the right time, that's also going to suit your maturity. And obviously, it's a massive topic. So
also, the other factor is, again, as a teacher, the whole education system has been warped to it's been made into a education product. Okay, so schools are under so much pressure. Head teachers, every teacher is under so much pressure to produce results. They have to produce results. It's not like you're educating children. you're producing results.
Mm.
Okay, so if you don't produce results, it's not the children who failed, it's the teachers that have failed.
Yes.
So that introduces another dynamic where, so you're not nurturing people's learning, you're not nurturing the young person,
You're hitting
you're
scores.
not directing them to develop themselves in the
Mm.
best way. You're making sure they get the results.
Mm.
So you're going to give them whatever it takes.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a
So-
lot of schools now also use those results almost like a marketing tool, sort of saying,
Yeah.
we've got this many A star to C's or this
Get-
many GCSE results, so
Get
come to
people
us.
to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously this is such a loaded kind of topic, and there's so many different tenets of it that, you know, we can kind of unpick, and it'd be really lovely to do that just after a short break.
Oh.
So we will see you back here in a few minutes' time. If you have any questions, do call the number, and we'll see you back soon.